Well, would you look at that? Here I am, sitting here pouring my heart out about the most expensive mistake of my life, and I almost forgot the most important part of our conversation. I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I? Before we dive any deeper into the wreckage of this story, I want to know who I'm talking to today. Where are you listening from? Whether you're on your morning commute, tucked away in a quiet office, or winding down with a warm cup of tea after a long day, go on and drop a little comment to let me know. I love reading where these stories travel to. It makes this big world feel just a little bit smaller. And if you're new around here, well, a very warm welcome to the family. Do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. It's a small click for you, but it truly is the lifeblood of this channel. It's what helps us keep digging up these stories and bringing them to light. We're building something special here, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. Don't forget to hit that notification bell too, so you never miss a moment of the drama. All right, now where was I? Ah, yes, the legend of Margaret Turner. Now, you have to understand the context here. Margaret was no ordinary grandmother. To the casual observer at the local grocery store or the Sunday morning church service, she was just a quiet, unassuming little woman with a penchant for knitting intricate sweaters and sipping Earl Grey tea. She was the kind of person who would apologize to a mannequin if she bumped into it. But in the world of high finance, back in her heyday, she was a ghost. A legend they whispered about in dark, wood-panelled boardrooms when the regulators were closing in and the walls felt like they were shrinking. She was a master forensic accountant, the kind of woman who could find a missing penny in a billion-dollar haystack and tell you exactly whose pocket it was hiding in, what currency it was converted from, and exactly what time it got there. She didn't just look at spreadsheets. She read them like a crime scene. She had an eye for the truth, even when it was buried under 20 layers of fancy facades, offshore shell companies, and polished corporate lies. She was as sharp as a tack and twice as pointed when she needed to be, hidden behind a pair of sensible reading glasses and a gentle smile. Let me tell you, when her son David, bless his heart, he always was a bit too trusting for his own good, announced he was marrying into the Ashford family, Margaret's internal alarm didn't just chirp, it screamed. It was a visceral, gut-level warning. The Ashfords were shipping tycoons. We're talking old money that felt like it owned the very salt in the ocean itself. They were the kind of people who believed the laws of physics, the laws of the land, and the basic rules of human decency simply didn't apply to them. They lived in a world of private jets, silent handshakes, and secrets that went back 3 generations. And oh, that Vanessa, the golden daughter of the Ashford clan. Goodness, that woman was trouble from the very first second she stepped out of her chauffeured limousine. She always had her nose so high in the air, I'm surprised she didn't trip over her own ego every morning. She treated David like a trophy she'd won at an auction, something to show off at galas, but never to truly value as a partner. And she looked at Margaret? Well, she looked at Margaret like she was a piece of dusty, outdated furniture that didn't belong in the penthouse suite. She made it clear from day one that Margaret was an outsider, a lowly worker who was barely tolerated for the sake of the wedding photos. Well, you can imagine how it went down at the wedding reception. It was a sickeningly grand affair, held at their massive cliffside estate with white roses that cost more than most people's houses, and a guest list that looked like a who's who of the Forbes list. Margaret, trying her absolute best to be the gracious mother-in-law, was navigating the crowded dance floor, holding a small glass of water when she accidentally bumped into Vanessa. A tiny splash of sparkling water, hardly enough to notice, really, landed on the hem of Vanessa's custom-made 6-figure silk gown. It was an honest mistake, A total accident in a room filled with 500 people. But Vanessa? She didn't see an accident. She saw an opportunity to humiliate a woman she considered beneath her. Right there, in the center of the ballroom, in front of the governors, the CEOs, and the high society of 3 different states. She grabbed a full glass of deep, dark, expensive red wine from a passing waiter. She didn't throw it. That would have been too quick. She poured it. Slowly. Deliberately. She emptied the entire glass over Margaret's head, watching the dark liquid soak through her hair and stain her beautiful, modest lace dress. A dress Margaret had saved up for months to buy, specifically for this day. The music seemed to die out. The room went dead silent. You could hear the waves crashing on the jagged rocks 100 feet below the balcony. Vanessa leaned in close, her breath smelling of expensive champagne and cold arrogance, and hissed loud enough for the first 5 rows of guests to hear. "Know your place, you pathetic, penniless little bookkeeper. You're a stain on this family name, and I'm going to make sure you're washed out of our lives before the honeymoon is even over." But you know Margaret. She didn't cry. She didn't scream or make a scene. She didn't give Vanessa the satisfaction of a breakdown. No, she just stood there with the quiet, terrifying dignity of a queen in a ruined dress. She wiped a single drop of wine from her cheek, looked that girl right in the eye with a gaze that could freeze fire, and whispered, "Vanessa, dear, you just made the most expensive mistake of your entire life. I hope you enjoyed that wine, because it's the last thing you'll ever have a taste for." And let me tell you, she meant every single word. See, that forensic accountant inside Margaret didn't just wake up that night. She went to war. Margaret went home, bypassed the wedding cake sitting in her fridge, and opened her old encrypted laptop. She didn't sleep for 3 days. She didn't even change out of her stained clothes until the sun came up the first morning. She started digging into the Ashford ledgers, the public ones, the private ones, and the secret black books they thought had been shredded and buried in the late 90s. She tracked wire transfers to the Cayman Islands that moved at 3 in the morning. She traced ghost shipping containers that were registered as carrying electronics, but never actually carried anything but untraceable cash. She uncovered a web of racketeering, systematic tax evasion, and bribery that involved names that would make your head spin. It wasn't just a scandal. It was a criminal empire masquerading as a shipping company. For months, she lived a double life. By day, she was the doting grandmother, visiting David and Vanessa in their cold, modern mansion, bringing over Tupperware containers of lasagna and smiling through their insults. She sat at their dinner table, listening to them brag about their offshore gains, all while mentally cataloguing the names of the banks they mentioned. By night, she was a digital assassin, peeling back the layers of the Ashford fortune until she found the smoking gun. A series of payments to a foreign official that proved the entire foundation of their latest multi-billion-dollar merger was built on a lie. The Ashfords eventually realized a shark was circling their golden cage. When their high-priced security team finally traced the digital footprints back to Margaret's modest little suburban home, Richard Ashford himself tried to play the hero. He didn't send a lawyer. He went himself. He thought he could intimidate a little old lady. He invited her to his office, a room filled with stolen antiquities and overpriced cigars, and slid a contract across the desk. $2 million a year, for life, deposited into a secret account, just to retire and move to a beach house in Florida. No questions asked, just total silence. But Margaret couldn't be bought. She didn't want their blood money. She wanted the books to balance. She looked at Richard, pushed the contract back with one finger, and said, "I'm an accountant, Richard. My whole life has been about making sure the numbers are right. And right now, your soul is deep in the red, and the interest is due today. Now, you'd think Richard would have backed down, but the arrogance of the Ashfords knew no bounds. They tried to set her up. They tried to frame David for embezzlement within the company, thinking that would silence her. They planted documents, they bribed witnesses, and they even had him arrested on a Friday afternoon, so he'd have to spend the weekend in a cell. Vanessa actually had the nerve to call Margaret and tell her that if she didn't hand over her research, David would stay in prison for the rest of his life. That was their second mistake. You can mess with Margaret's dress, and you can mess with her career, but you never, ever mess with her son. Margaret didn't panic. She called in favors from people she'd helped decades ago, high-ranking officials in the DOJ who owed her their careers. She spent 48 hours straight in a secure facility, laying out the evidence piece by piece. She showed them how the Ashfords weren't just moving money, they were destabilizing local economies to drive down shipping prices. The investigation grew into something much larger than just one family. Margaret found links to a global network of dark shipping, where vessels would disappear from satellite tracking only to reappear weeks later with millions in contraband. She found the forged bills of lading, the dummy corporations in Luxembourg, and the payroll for a small army of lawyers whose only job was to hide the truth. She worked through the night, fueled by cold coffee and a burning need for justice, connecting dots that the FBI had been trying to link for a decade. The look on Richard's face when the federal agents marched into his annual charity gala 2 weeks later, led by Margaret Turner herself, wearing a brand new dress and holding a 300-page audit that was tighter than a drum, must have been worth more than all the gold in his vaults. The Ashford Empire didn't just fall, it imploded. It was a total scorched earth collapse. Vanessa and her father were sentenced to decades in federal prison for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. The yachts were seized, the estate was sold at auction to pay back the government, and the Ashford name became a cautionary tale taught in every business school in the country. Even Vanessa's 6-figure wedding dress was confiscated as an asset of a criminal enterprise. David was cleared of all charges within hours, and the look of betrayal on his face when he realized what his wife had tried to do to him was the only thing that made Margaret sad. In the aftermath, the scale of the Ashfords' crimes shocked the world. It wasn't just millions, it was billions. Margaret's testimony was the cornerstone of the biggest financial prosecution in 20 years. She sat in that courtroom for weeks, perfectly calm, explaining complex tax shelters to a jury like she was teaching a kindergarten class. Every time Vanessa glared at her from the defense table, Margaret would just offer a polite, thin-lipped smile and continue reading the numbers. And Margaret? She got to watch the whole thing tumble down from her front porch, rocking slowly in her chair. She didn't get rich from it, though the whistleblower reward from the IRS was more than enough to keep her and David comfortable for 3 lifetimes. But she got something better. She got the truth. She knew she was the one who brought the giants to their knees with nothing but a keyboard, a sharp mind, and a sense of justice. She eventually moved into a quiet house by the sea, far away from the shipping lanes. She spends her days gardening and her nights reading, but every once in a while, if you look closely at her desk, you'll see a single glass of red wine. She doesn't drink it. She just keeps it there as a reminder that sometimes the most expensive mistakes are the ones that finally set us free. David eventually remarried, a lovely girl who works as a librarian and actually knows how to say please and thank you. They have 2 kids now, and Margaret is the most beloved grandmother you've ever seen. But deep down, David knows. He knows that the woman who bakes him chocolate chip cookies is the same woman who single-handedly dismantled a global criminal empire because someone was rude to her at a wedding. It just goes to show you, never underestimate the person who knows how to count the pennies, because they're usually the ones who know exactly where the bodies are buried. You can take a person's dignity, you can take their money, but the moment you try to take their truth, you've already lost. Think about the people in your life who you might be overlooking. The quiet neighbor, the soft-spoken colleague, the parent who seems to just blend into the background. Behind those calm exteriors often lies a lifetime of experience, a mountain of secrets, and a spine made of cold, hard steel. Now, I'm dying to hear your thoughts on this one. Do you think Margaret went too far with her revenge? Would you have taken the $2 million and moved to Florida? Or would you have burned it all down for the sake of justice? Have you ever had a moment where a small mistake turned into a life-changing event? Maybe you've encountered a Vanessa in your own life. How did you handle it? Let me know down in the comments, won't you? I'll be down there responding to as many as I can. And please, if you enjoyed this journey into the dark heart of the Ashford Empire, give this video a like and share it with someone who needs a reminder that the little guy still has a lot of power. Be sure to stick around, because I've got plenty more stories of hidden secrets, high stakes, and the quiet people you should never, ever cross. We're going to talk about the billionaire who tried to steal a village's water supply, and the primary school teacher who stopped him. You won't want to miss that one. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your ledgers clean, and never, ever spill the wine on a forensic accountant. Stay tuned.